Welcome back. This is Jeff Byers. I am your instructor for ANY 150, and this is Module 2, UV Mapping Part 4. So we are now at a kind of a crossroads on, okay, so I've got my map packed into one UV the best I can, as most efficient possible. And so what do I do now? Well, if I were going to go the old school way, I would go in there and go to UV snapshot. Okay, so make sure the object is selected in object mode, which means it turns green. You want to make sure that you're in object mode up here. So select by object type. Yep. And I right click over and go to select, and so I select it. I make sure that wireframe is on. Okay, this guy right here. And here's our snapshot tool. Okay, UV snapshot. So click on that. And this is how I save my UVs so I can manipulate them in a program like Photoshop. Okay, so with one UV map, I want to go pretty high resolution. So if I'm just going to do one UV map, then I want to go like 4096. That is perfect. I don't want to go any higher than that. Okay, 1:1. And I want to make sure that it is a PNG. Now, a lot of people, the reason why I pick PNG for the initial UV map is because it doesn't compress it. JPEG compresses your UV maps. Yeah. So let's think about this. Okay. PNG's uncompressed. That means it's going to be a really large size. Now, you have to think about that if you have very little RAM. If you have a computer that is not a monster or a beast, then you're probably going to want to make sure you click on JPEG. Okay, otherwise this size is going to be too big for your computer. It's going to take a lot of space, a lot of memory. Okay, now most of the time I have a pretty decent computer, so I do PNGs. So if you have a lot of RAM on your motherboard, and you have a really nice video card, and you have a lot of hard drive space, then PNG is the way to go. Otherwise, if you have a system that struggles, then make sure you create JPEGs. Okay? Alright? I always ask for JPEGs anyway. I'm going to go ahead and do JPEG. It's not going to hurt anything. The compression of JPEG is pretty good. But if you want to be a purist, I mean, when I'm doing production, I do PNGs or I do Targets. Okay? You know, and when you're working with game engines, they're going to want Targets. Okay? Alright? So, just remember that JPEG to save space. It actually works really good when you render. It's really fast. PNGs are really clean. Okay, and Arnold actually likes those. Okay, so what you could do is, if you run into issues or problems, if you have an external hard drive, save in all three of them. Okay, and then you can grab them when you need them. And this just use JPEG when you're actually in Maya and rendering and all that stuff. Okay. Anyway, I'll show you how to do JPEG first. And so go ahead and click on Browse, and hopefully you guys are saving and creating the projects the correct way. So let's just say, let me close this a minute. Let's just say that I didn't set my project. What does that mean? Setting your project. So you know how to create a project, but how do you set it? Well, you have to know where your project is on your computer. Okay? And if you're working off one computer and not moving back and forth from home to, let's say, the school computer, the school computer, then you won't have much of a problem. You won't have to be setting your project all the time. But if you do go in here and I go to my snapshot, my UV snapshot, get everything set up here, and I go to Browse, and it's not telling me that I'm in the right directory, it's not going to the Images folder, then you didn't set your project right. Okay? Alright? So, I want to call this, and always put your first and last name on there, like J. Byers, first initial, last name. Okay? Always do that. So just always put first initial, last name on everything, and then underscore sci-fi crate. right? And this is going to be the large one, large side, because we have a small one too. Whoopsie. What happened there? Doggone it. I accidentally hit the escape key. So we'll do that again. J Byers Sci-Fi. Whoops. And create. And I want to type in large. And I want to type in UV. There we go. Alright, so J Byers Sci-Fi create large UV. So I'm very descriptive, and I think you should too. You should be very descriptive on how you name stuff. If you just put J Byers, your first name, last name, UV, and you do that same thing for your small crate, you don't have enough definition there to understand which one is which, unless you actually get into it and look at it, and that's a waste of time. So make sure you be descriptive when you name your stuff, so you understand what it is when you look at it. So click on Save, okay, and then you click Apply and Close. Okay, so now I've saved my UV map. Okay, and what does that UV map look like? Everybody asks me that, so let me go into Photoshop. You can go into any paint program and open it up the same way. Go into Photoshop. Once that opens up, then I can go to File, Open, and I can go into my documents, and I'm running off my hard drive, my projects. You'll have yours in a different situation, a different spot, and images, and there it is. Click on that, open it up, and there you have it. That's what it looks like. It looks a little different. Doesn't have a background color or anything like that. And with PNG, PNG uses shows everything black as transparent or white as transparent. So you may not see this at all. So if you do a PNG, you'll have to add a black background to it. If you know how to use Photoshop, that's going to be helpful. Right, this is what it looks like, and what you do is you apply textures. You would bring a texture in, start breaking the texture up and applying them in here. Okay, so I would find a steel texture and apply and just start working that way. But now we have something like what's called Substance Painter that I'm excited to show you and how to use. So I'm going to close this up. No need for this anymore. I just wanted to show you what it looks like in Photoshop if you want to use Photoshop. And so back in here, we don't need this anymore. So I'm going to keep it, but you want to save your work, File, Save Scene As, and continue saving your work. Okay, so this is my UV layout for this one. And you can see I've got a lot of saves now. With all the videos that I've been creating, I've been saving a lot. And that's what you should be doing too. Alright, so Udims. Now we're ready for Udim tiling. After 8 minutes, time goes fast, doesn't it? I'm sorry for rambling so much, but I really want to explain things a little better to you than what you see on YouTube. So now we're going to go to UV shell. Now we're going to take our UVs. I'm going to take my biggest piece here, okay, and I'm going to scale it up as far as I can within that UV shell. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to scale it up as far as I can within that UV shell. There we go. Okay. And because I'm using Udims, I don't have to worry about wasting texture space. It's arbitrary now. Okay? This doesn't mean anything. And that's the beauty of Udims, using Udims. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I get what I want, the largest piece that I have. I'm going to get the largest piece that I have, and I want to set the Texel Density. So I'm going to get that, and that's at 2.42. That's like almost twice as good as I could get with the UV. And you can see the UV texture space on that. Look at that. Twice as good. Almost 4 times as good. But yeah, technically it's twice as good. So twice as much resolution using Udims. Okay, so you can see the benefits, right? Okay, that's the best I could do with that, and this is the best I could do with Udims, meaning that's my Texel Density now. Okay, Texel Density still makes a difference, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these guys. Okay, I'm going to move them out of the way and just kind of move these pieces out because they're going to overlap each other anyway. I just know it. So I'm going to move that. Whoops, missed one here. Like those guys, move these out of the way. And I can now take these guys and move these out of the way because we don't want them too close together, grouped together. There we go. And so that looks good. We're just kind of move things out of the way. Okay. Keeping them kind of in groups, you know. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to select all these guys. Alright? And I'm going to set it. There we go. So you can see those expanded. Take this guy and put this guy in here with this guy. Okay. And take these. See how they overlapped each other? That's a problem. That's why I wanted to kind of separate them a little bit more. There we go. And so I'm going to separate these. These guys will be separated in their own UV space. And it really depends on how you want to separate everything. You don't really have to worry anymore, meaning that you could have different metals on different pieces. So I can have this UV over here, and these two, and these would share the same UV space. Okay. Those are the bands. So I have 3 bands here, top bands. And then I've got 3 lower bands, I believe. Yeah, those are the lower bands. Let's move those in there. So I can have these occupying the same UV space. Now it still takes a lot of memory, okay? So if I use a lot of texture space, say let's take this one. It still costs me memory. I can use all this texture space, okay? But it still costs me a lot of memory in Maya, so you have to be careful still. Like RAM and disk space and all that stuff. So this stuff, it still takes memory, okay? It still takes a lot of memory. Because we're still using, even if I'm only going to go with 1024, okay? Okay, if I go with 4096, I'm going to get incredible resolution, but my system might crash. Okay, so I'm going to try to go with something like 2048. Okay, 2048, and we'll kind of experiment with this and see how far we can go with this thing. Okay, so let's go in here and let's go ahead and place these over here. Let's say we want to have the ends to be different texture map. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in here like that. Again, one thing you have to be careful of with Udims is that you cannot go in like this. You cannot go over. You have to go within that other UV space. So that's basically, this is the first one. So this would be 1001. This would be 1002. This would be 1003, and so on and so forth. And the thing is, you cannot go outside of the space, otherwise you'll cause an error. And then you wonder why your Udims don't work. That's why. If you do this, it won't work. Okay? You have to be within that Udim space. Okay? You can't cross over. Anywhere. Can't cross over here either. So, you have to be super careful. Can't cross over. Right? So, on these guys, I want them to be in one unit by themselves. There we go. And, okay. Doesn't matter how these are. I don't care if I'm wasting UV space. It doesn't matter. I'd rather you didn't, but it's just, you know, it's just how Udims work, and that's okay. So I'm going to go in here and we'll give them their own Udim space. Okay, cool. And we want these to be in this Udim space right here. Now notice that I have to, that's too big. Okay, so I either have to break this up into a seam, or I have to turn down, I have to turn the texel density, and this is a decision I'm willing to make. The texel density will be sacrificed in this one, just a little bit. Don't go too far. Okay, move that around. Let's turn that up a little bit. There we go. That's good. It's still within that space. I'm going to look at it. Zoom in. Yep, that looks good. That looks good. Okay, great. Texel density looks good over here. And so we got other pieces here. And so I'm going to select these guys and move those over to here. And those are the same pieces, so I'm going to add those over here. Okay. I remember having 8 of these at one time. There we go. Let's move those out of the way. Give those a little more space, a little more breathing room. We've got plenty of room now. So we can just kind of go in here and move those around. There we go. Okay. So now we're cooking with Udims. Okay, so what are they then? Right, Udim tiles allow you the space and basically the space to create more UV shells, add more UV shells, and give them a Udim number, so you can have more efficiency. So, and I'm not worried about wasting space. Okay, I mean I'm mindful of it. I don't want to waste too much space, but also I realize that I've got some freedom now, and I'm not stuck with one UV space here. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and we could easily go 2048 and have the same texture resolution that we had before. Okay, we could do, basically we had 1. Okay, now we are able to do 2048 by 2048. Let's go start with that. It's going to give you, basically you're going to have 2048 by 2048 by 2048 by 2048 by 2048 by 2048 by 2048. So, in reality, if I did a 4096, just 2 Udims equals 4096. So I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times the resolution I would have by just doing one 4096 space. So that's how efficient Udims can be. Now they do take 6 times as much space though. So if I do 2048 by 2048 and so on and so on and so on and so on, let's say 24 by 24 map is 24 megabytes. So I've got 24 megabytes times 24 megabytes times 24 megabytes times, you can go on and on. And so that can add a lot to your system RAM. You can see how that can be a problem. But if I'm not using thousands of Udims, I'm okay. This is kind of a small object, so we should be okay. Even with a small system, you should be fine. Okay? We'll try it and see what happens. Alright, so with that done, I got everything laid out the way I want it. That means that if I go into UV shell and select those UV shells, that can be a different texture, a totally different texture. Okay? And this can be a totally different texture, and these can be totally different texture, and these will be a totally different texture, and so on and so forth. You can see that all of this can be totally different textures if I wanted them to be. Okay? Right. So like that can be metal, and this could be rubber, and this could be whatever. And this could be chrome, and this could be, so you could have lots of different textures in here, and you have your lots of different options, and they're at high resolution. That's the benefit of Udims. Okay?